Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
Think scaling your AI pilots is hard? Think again. With Watson X, you can deploy AI across any environment. Above the clouds, and on lots of clouds. With your secured data on-prem, in real time on center court, and assisting bank tellers on the edge. Watson X helps you deploy AI wherever you need it, so you can take your business wherever it needs to go. IBM, let's create.
Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Lisa Mateo.
Thank you, everyone. It's nice to see so many people getting to know each other, kind of coming back again, old friends coming back together again. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us here for the Business Value of AI event. My name is Lisa Mateo. I'm a business correspondent for Bloomberg. And I got to say, it's nice to have everyone here in New York amongst this beautiful backdrop that I don't take enough advantage of every day. But also the people joining in from the live stream from wherever you are. We're excited and thrilled that you can join us. Now, we all know, right? Artificial intelligence is changing our lives. It's a tool that allows users to rethink how they ingest information and data, how they analyze data. It helps us think about the results and how we can help use those results to improve decision making. Now, of course, with changing technology comes what? A lot of questions, right? For example, how data and AI, those powered tools, how they can be used to improve things like productivity, how that can be used to improve profitability. We all like that, right? How you can use that data and how you can have access to it, how it can be comprehensive data. And also on top of that, how you can keep that human in the loop and keep bias out of it. So you're going to hear from a number of business and technology executives today who are going to share their strategies into how they're deploying AI into each of their businesses. And on top of that, they'll talk about the different challenges they've had. They'll talk about the success stories they've had. And on top of that, we'll also talk about where the technology is headed into the future. But before we get to all that, I have a couple of announcements. First off, I want everyone here to take part in the conversation. How you do that, if you look on all your tables, you have QR codes there. Scan in, and then you can put your question in. We'll try our very best to get it answered on the panels here today. Social media, a big part. Be sure to use hashtag BusinessValueAI. Follow us over at Bloomberg Live, too, where we have different highlights from the event from today. And also, if you post something, a picture, maybe a video, or you want to post some insight, something that you learned for today, be sure to hashtag, yes, the value, Business Value AI, and also tag us over at Bloomberg Live. Finally, I want to thank our sponsor, IBM. And with that, I'd like to get things started with our opening remarks. Please welcome to the stage IBM's David McDonald.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So on behalf of Bloomberg and IBM, I want to thank you all for coming to spend some time with us as we talk about the business value of AI. We are so thrilled to have such a turnout from some of the great companies and prestigious attendees here today. It's going to be a good session. So I wanted to take just a couple minutes as we kick things off to talk with you a little bit about IBM's own journey with AI and generative AI. So in April of 2020, Arvind Krishna started as our CEO at IBM, and he was faced with some real challenges. For the prior 5 years, our company had been in revenue decline. So Arvind had to establish who is IBM today, get the business turned around from a revenue growth perspective, and figure out what to do on a cost perspective. And what he did is he really established IBM's vision to be the world leader from a technology perspective in hybrid cloud and AI. And over the last few years, he's built those businesses into the hybrid cloud business being about a $7 billion annual business, and the AI business being over $1 billion a year for us now. But we had this massive legacy business, which was clearly going to shrink over time. And what Arvind was able to do by leaning in on AI and leaning in on hybrid cloud was turn the business around from revenue decline for 5 years to now 3 years of revenue growth. And we're growing in a range of about 2 to 4%, which is, it's improvement, but not yet where we want to be. Now, you may have, if you follow IBM stock, you'll notice over the last year, our stocks increased by about 43% over the last year, and about 50% year to date. And the reason for that is we've really delivered dramatic productivity improvements. So over the time since Arvind's been in the role, we've improved our profitability. We were always, even though revenue was in decline, we were always a profitable company, right? So we were driving about 9.5 billion in annual profit. We've now got that up to 13 billion in annual profit. How did we do that? We did that by eating our own cooking. We've applied AI and generative AI extensively throughout our business processes. And we've taken over the last 3 years, we've taken just about $3 billion of cost out of our operations. We started with HR. We've rolled into procurement. You're going to hear from Dun & Bradstreet today. We actually are using the solution that we jointly developed with Dun & Bradstreet to improve our performance in that area. We've rolled it out in finance. We've rolled it out in sales. So really, roughly 30 applications that are in production across the company. And I'll spend just a moment on HR. So we have about 280,000 employees globally. We had an HR call center in the Philippines with 600 people. Now, to be fair, employees are relatively inexpensive in the Philippines, so it wasn't wildly expensive. But by taking the repetitive tasks that those individuals were performing and automating them with generative AI, we've reduced the number of people in that call center from 600 people to 70 people. That's about a $30 million annual savings there. As well, we front-ended, we use Workday as our HR system of record. Well, to be frank, our Workday deployment was really difficult to use for most of our people managers. 3 years ago, we front-ended it with a chatbot. We handle 9 million inquiries every year through that chatbot. So you don't have to know how to use Workday. If you want to transfer an employee, you need to give somebody a promotion, whatever the function is, you literally pull up the chatbot in natural language, tell it what you want it to do. It may ask you, if I say, I want to transfer an employee, it'll say, here's your list of direct reports. Which one do you want to transfer? You select that person. Who do you want to transfer it to? You type in a name, and literally it completes the entire transaction in Workday for you without you ever having to go into Workday. So that's one example, but we're doing this really across the company. And as I say, we automated a lot of our interactions in our customer support function. We've taken out over $400 million over 5 years in customer support. So these are real quantifiable savings that frankly have improved our employee engagement as well. Like in the HR area, we saw our net promoter score for HR increase from 16 to 74. So tremendous improvements. It's just made life a lot easier for us. So I think you're going to hear from a variety of companies today where they are in the journey, how they did it. What I'll tell you is it can be done. 2 big learnings for us. One is it's fine to start out in IT and do some experimentation. What we found both inside and outside our company as we work with clients, it can't be an IT experiment. You have to start with a line of business executive who has a problem to solve, and the technology can help you solve that problem. And when you do that, you get great results, but it really has to be a business-led project. Secondly, one of the things that was interesting is we found we love generative AI, we love large language models, but you don't need a large language model to solve every problem, right? And large language models are great, but they're also very expensive to run. So we use other types of foundational models. For example, in that example I used of the chatbot that front-ends Workday. Well, I don't need to know everything on the internet to front-end my Workday deployment and make that easier to use, right? So I use a much smaller foundational model that took advantage of things like, all the Workday technical manuals, videos we had built to show people how to use it. That all fed our model and trained our model and made it easier for us to operate at a much, much lower cost. So I'm out of time, but I want to thank you all for coming today. I think it's going to be a great couple hours of interaction, and I hope you get value, and I hope you're able to get tremendous return on investment as we have with your Gen AI investments. Thank you very much.
Hey. All right, we're going to talk about how to create a world-class IT organization. Who better to talk about that? Seth Cohen, Chief Information Officer at Procter Gamble. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Hey, everybody, how are you?
We got a good crowd here.
Yeah.
Now, I have to be full disclosure. We had a conversation before, and we were chatting, and I started talking about tech, and you said, no. Let's start with capability. So I want you to start off with explaining why that's a great foundation to start with.
Yeah, so first of all, I really do appreciate you all being here and appreciate getting an opportunity to talk to you all about Procter & Gamble and our technology and how we help power the innovation for the company. The reason why we feel very strongly that we don't lead with technology is, at the end of the day, Procter & Gamble is all about how we deliver for our consumers. So the mothers that are buying Pampers, or people like me that need to buy Gillette shavers, we have needs. And to really have a deep, deep appreciation and understanding of those needs and where we might have more jobs to be done to fulfill those needs, that's capabilities that we need to solve for. And so when we talk about how do we transform, it starts with those capability needs. We then are able to work with our various business partners, and it goes all the way back through the value chain in bringing those capabilities to life. And those capabilities get brought to life through a combination of people, process, and of course, technology, which is why we don't want to lead with just the technology.
Gotcha. Now, as we start to get into that, so let's dig into it. Let's get into the platform orientation that you talk about that helps you build those different solutions. What would you want to start with? There's data, there's Gen AI, there's so much to go through.
Oh my gosh, so much, right?
Throwing it at you.
So I think it starts with just more of a philosophical approach to how we do enablement. So the way that we think about enablement is almost two big archetypes. One is enablement of kind of scaled solutions. So for example, how Procter & Gamble decides to close its books every month. We don't look to do that differently around the world. We do that once, and we do that with one big scaled system. And so that's the typical types of system architectures that most of us would be akin to. However, as I mentioned, many of the capabilities that we need to deliver are capabilities that are very different from one product to the next. So we have categories that range from baby, like Pampers diapers, all the way, as I said, to like Tide detergent or Gillette. Those capability needs can look very, very different. And so as a result, to enable them, we've developed more of a platform orientation approach to that. And the way it works is through the platforms, we then can build composite solutions to meet the unique needs that we have within our business. Now, what's a platform? What's in the platform? It's pretty inclusive. Things like data sit in the platform. AI factory, even this new thing around generative AI sits up in that platform. But also things like predictive AI, descriptive analytics, things like robotic process automation, as well as an orchestration layer that lets us bring all of this together. This all sits in a platform layer so that when we're able and need to build new capabilities, it's actually relatively easy for us to then build on top of the platform, which gives us all of the security, gives us all of the integration, gives us everything we need to be successful.
Now you're giving us this overall, so let's get to the specifics. How are you specifically leveraging technology? What are you using right now?
So in terms of like capabilities that we're enabling.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like, what are you using out there?
So let's talk about some fun areas. So as an example, if we have a salesperson that goes into a grocery store, what that salesperson is now given is on their iPad or on their phone, they're given a detailed set of analytics that tells that salesperson where the opportunities are for that store. And the reason why that's so important is in the old days, in order to get to that insight, that poor salesperson would have to go up and down the aisles, and we're located in just about every aisle of that grocery store, to try to figure out what's working, what's not working, what SKUs are there, what SKUs aren't there. Well, through the technology and the platforms that we've established for this salesperson, we can tell them as they walk in, you're underperforming in this store in this SKU. This SKU's not even represented in this store. And we're able to show the salesperson all this information so that they can then spend their time doing what salespeople love to do, sell. So they're able to then, with a very credible case, go to the store management to talk about things. And the nice part about it is we have all kinds of analytics that tell us your same company's store down the street is outperforming you. And these guys are very competitive with one another. I know Kroger's here, and she'll talk a little bit about this later, I'm sure, as well. Competition can be a friend, right, to talk about those types of things. And we can provide it to the person as they walk into the door.
So with all that said, how is the workforce changing? Like, are there certain roles that you need more of or certain you need less of because of all this technology?
I think it's less for us about quantity of people. We think that the technology enablement that we're dealing with is really a way to supercharge the sales force. And the example I just gave is a good example of that. But what we do feel very strongly about is raising the digital acuity of all people in the organization is critical. I'm personally of the belief that if we were to fast forward 10 years from now, the lines between people that are coded as IT professionals versus people that are coded as non-IT but in a functional area professionals, those lines are going to continue to blur, and that's a good thing. I believe that the digital acuity of the organization is what's going to ultimately allow us to continue to excel and build new capabilities at much faster paces than even today we're seeing.
So how do you get that digital buy-in? How do you get everyone on board?
It's a great question. It actually starts with, we don't lead with digital.
Okay.
We lead with capability,
There
right?
you go.
So when that salesperson walks in, I'm using that example, we have many examples, but when I use that example, that salesperson walks to work, do you think that person is upset that they don't have to go up and down the aisles counting SKUs? No, it's a good thing, right? So there's this description of a thing called a flywheel, right? You start getting some of these capabilities and all of a sudden the momentum builds. People want more and more and more of it. Yes, please, give me more. We're seeing much more of that now. So we don't lead with technology. We lead with how do we make your life easier? And again, it's all rooted in our ability to delight the consumer. So why is that sales example a good example for us? At the end of the day, when that mom comes into the store, we want to make sure that that box of Pampers is where she expects it to be, in the size that she needs it to be in the quality that she wants. And so by working backwards from that, that's how we build these capabilities in. So that's our message to the store, that's our message to the sales team, to the supply chain organization, to the R&D organization. It's all about fulfilling the needs of that consumer.
So is that where people should start? You know, find out what the problem is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, I would say, you know, Procter & Gamble is a 187-year-old company, a little bit older than me. I would say one of the things that Procter & Gamble has done incredibly well over the last 187 years is constant innovation. But it's not innovation just for innovation's sake. It's by getting in touch with the consumer. And everything we do, literally everything we do, is in the eyes of what can we do to make the consumer experience better with our products. And from that, it unlocks tons of value for the organization.
Now, what are some of the challenges that you face? Because I know you're talking about all the different technology, but as far as is data, could that be a challenge within that? I'm sure, because when I talked, you said data, data, and data.
Yeah. I would tell anybody who is embarking on this journey, data is where you need to be spending your time. The other parts of the technology, you know, and all the fun stuff you hear about, you know, generative AI and all the foundational models, those are all interesting, but they're worthless unless you have data. And when I say data, it's very, very important that when you think about the data, you're thinking about it in a way that is not just a data for a single use, but rather it's data that is going to be built on one another. So I would say many legacy companies, and I would unfortunately say when you're 187 years old, the word legacy will come up. Many legacy companies have been built with more foundational silos based on functions. What we're seeing more and more is, and as you hopefully are hearing me talk about when we talk about these capabilities, these aren't constrained by a function. It's end to end. And so as we start to think about data, freeing the data to allow the data to have use cases that go far beyond what we would traditionally have used as more of a functional orientation is a big piece of it. I'm not going to pretend it's easy. It's not. I'm also not going to pretend that Procter & Gamble, we're done. Check, finish, out the door. This is an ongoing journey. I know later today you're going to have a guest up here from PepsiCo. This is his life, and I know he can talk volumes about this as well. Data is absolutely where I would focus your time and attention.
Now, with so many companies out there struggling when they want to, let's say, build models or anything like that, there's this talk about whether to build versus buy. So what works best for Procter & Gamble?
It's specific on the models.
Okay.
You're asking specifically about the models. Yeah, so it's really interesting, and I'll tell you a little secret. I know we're live streaming, so
Don't tell anyone.
so no one knows the answer yet. No one knows it. I was actually in Palo Alto last week, and I met with, I think, almost all the venture capital firms, and I asked one question of each, one same question. That is, what's your investment thesis related to generative AI? Usually, when you can get the answer to that, you can get an understanding of where they are placing their bets in terms of where are things going. I will tell you, there is no consistency in terms of where people think things are going. Where we are right now within our organization, we've made the decision that we're using largely the existing large language foundational models for these capabilities. Now, we are supplementing it with the RAG processes, with prompt engineering. We're doing a little bit of tuning, not much yet. We're starting to get involved in that a bit, but we're finding for the parts of the use cases that we find value in, generally speaking, for the use cases we have, they're usually pretty much okay. Now, the broader question is, are we outsourcing data science? No.
No. Okay.
No. We feel that data science is a skill that we want to internalize. What I think people maybe don't always fully appreciate, a data scientist is good when they know the models. They're great when they know the domain. And what we really try to focus on is making sure our data scientist understands our business and are able to work hand in hand with their functional counterparts to bring these capabilities to life. And so that usually requires a fairly significant level of insourcing of that talent to ensure that we can actually be learning and growing and agile in our development.
Now let's dig into budgets a little bit. Is your AI budget different from your, let's say, CIO budget? Is there a difference?
Yeah, so short answer, no.
Okay.
I have a business enablement budget.
Okay.
And I don't mean to be curt about that, but I never want to be in a position where I'm taking my budget and trying to segment it into different technologies. By doing so, I almost feel like I'm not doing the company a service. At the end of the day, my job is to ensure that the company is always able to make, pack, ship, and sell product, as well as innovate, drive new value, drive new capabilities in. Whatever that budget requirement is, it's evaluated against a return on investment that we do. And we make a decision as a company whether we do it. We don't have a separate IT budget for innovation from functional budgets. Again, it's people, process, and technology all get brought together. That's how we think about it.
And where do you see the technology headed? I mean, is there something that you wish it could do that it's not doing just yet? What do you need it to do?
Yeah, do my job for me. Yes. That would be awesome. Now, I would say where I think the interesting place where I'm starting to hear more of is this, another new term, agentic AI. You guys heard this term? It's the new term. All the cool kids are using it. Trust me, tomorrow we'll all have forgotten it. But the way that the agentic framework, the way I'm thinking about it is more in terms of how do I think about enablement as a series of microservices through an orchestration layer to bring things together that might not be easily brought together. So if you look at most of the press in these spaces, they tend to be very single dimensioned. They're AI use cases on generative AI. There's maybe robotic process automation use cases. There's maybe descriptive analytics use cases. My belief, and this is where I think where technology is going and where I believe we all need to think about, is the real value is how do I string together those disparate services in a way that creates even more value to the company. So there might be an end-to-end thing that we go after, capability, that starts with, I need to synthesize a whole bunch of disparate data. Well, that's a good use for generative AI, for sure. But the output of that might go into a dashboard. Oh, that's descriptive. That might be a good descriptive analytics. The output of that might go into some type of a predictive AI. So the ability to string that together in a very end-user, easy way is where I think we're going. And it's something that I'm probing with my team on how we can get there faster.
Now, what are you concerned about? I mean, with this, it's always changing constantly, the technology advancing. What are you concerned about? Anything moving forward? Anything that worries you?
Listen, I would say the concern I have is less about the technology and more about the identification of the capabilities that are coming up. So I've not yet found an area where I don't think we can crack the code to ultimately solve. There are some technologies that are coming up, emerging, maybe a little bit down there, like quantum is a good example, where it's not here yet, for sure, but those will have some incremental capabilities for companies like Procter Gamble, because quantum will get really good at optimization algorithms. So if you think about, like, we do a ton of stuff around optimization, whether it be our truck route optimizations, whether it be our production scheduling optimizations, et cetera. So there are parts of our value chain capabilities that I think we're a little bit handcuffed with today because the technology isn't quite where it needs to be yet. We're still doing very well relative to where we've been, but where we ultimately are going to start to see is, like, with technologies like quantum, et cetera, I think we'll see additional capabilities get developed.
Excellent. And we have a few minutes left, so I want to hit one question we have from the audience is sharing your view on the type of governance structures that need to be in place. So what type of governance do you think needs to be in place? That's a huge, huge topic that a lot of
do we have another 45 minutes? No, okay. So I completely agree. And whoever asked the question, good for you, because it's often one of these topics that people don't often like to talk about, but they're real and you need to deal with it. At Procter & Gamble, we use this term stewardship, and we take it very seriously. Like, in the board meetings, I'm talking about stewardship. I'm talking about what we're doing to ensure that our data is protected, that our data is in a place where we don't have unnecessary access, that the algorithms we're using don't have unnecessary bias in them, that we don't have drifting going on. So we have developed and spend a great deal of time ensuring that we have as strong of a capability to ensure against those negative things that are out there. Another reason why we believe having the human in the middle, listen, AI doesn't reason. I don't care what anyone tells you. It does not reason. AI does pattern recognition. It does not reason. Humans, us, we know how to reason. So having the human in the middle is also a good way for us to protect against that as well.
And against bias, too. That's another thing that people always talk about, too.
Exactly. So we do have, there's algorithmic ways to detect biasm, which we absolutely have in place.
Okay.
But again, the human in the middle is usually our best defense against much of that.
All right. Seth Cohen, thank you very
Thank
much.
you,
One
Lisa.
time for Seth Cohen.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Great to quit. All right, we're now going to talk about optimizing customer service using AI assistants. You've all used them. Now we're going to talk about it. Yeah, there we go. Boy, girl. Please welcome with us Hari Gopalakrishnan with Bank of America. We have Jody Combach with Kroger and Ravi Radhakrishnan with American Express. So thank you all for joining us for today. I want to dig right into it. Jody, I want to start with you. Kroger, when we talk about AI, data science, you guys have been using this for decades. I mean, we talked about this earlier. Yes. How has it advanced over the years, and how are you finding it the most useful?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we did start well over a decade, and I think I'll take you on a little bit of the journey that we've been on. So we really started with descriptive analytics, and that was where we were looking in the rearview mirror, looking at historical data, and figuring out insights that could inform the customer experience and how to optimize the operational performance of the company. We then moved on to predictive, where we were leveraging AI and machine learning to basically say, what do we think is going to happen? And you can imagine that then expanding into forecasting, supply chain optimization, other parts of the company. The prescriptive phase, which we are now in and deeply embedded in, is really taking those predictions and having prescriptive recommendations around what is the most important thing to do. And I'll give you a perfect example of how that comes to life. So we have hundreds of thousands of associates in our stores who are making decisions every day. You heard Seth talk about it before in terms of in-stock and management. Making sure you are prioritizing those tasks to do the most important work first is a great way to actually leverage this technology and capability that's available. The next thing I would say just very quickly is real-time decision-making. So think about the digital experience. We talked a little bit about that before. Within the digital experience, we have millions of customers who are building a basket, placing an order, critical items that they need for their home. When we look at what is actually available and sometimes have to make a substitution, how do we do that in the most effective way to still meet their needs, get them the product that they want? That is all that real-time decision-making. So incredible journey over that decade, but the progression has been really exciting, and where we're headed next is probably going to be the most exciting chapter so far.
We're definitely going to touch on that, so okay, hold that point there. Hari, when we spoke earlier, you talked about this high-tech, high-touch approach. So if you can explain what you meant by that and get into how you're leveraging technology at Bank of America.
Sure. So while people may like to go grocery shopping, nobody likes to go banking, right? So, our strategy all along has been is offering world-class high-tech solutions, because we believe customers eventually will want to do things themselves. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. On the other hand, we want to be there for them when they need help. So high-tech is fully digital. High-touch is, someone helping you. The problem is the fact that high-tech costs us pennies. High-touch costs us tens of dollars every interaction. So the question becomes, how do you transition customers so they actually find it easy, simple, faster, cheaper, better to go high-tech? And the good news for us has been the last 6 years, we've gone from 80% of our transactions being high-tech to 99% of our transactions being high-tech. So we've made that transition along with our customers. And the way we've done that is simply, first, traditional digitization, make things available on that mobile phone, things that you can do yourself. But the second thing is, instead of jamming a bunch of stuff in there, how do you make it easier for people to use that application? And that's where AI came in for us. And two parts to it. One, interacting in a much more natural language. Having expectations that people are going to hunt and peck and go 3 levels down a menu, people aren't going to do that. So being able to talk in a human voice. And 7 years ago, we launched Erica. We now have 2 billion transactions on Erica where customers just come in and talk in a human language. They want to pay a bill. They owe someone money. They want to see how much they spent on groceries. They can do all that through the power of natural language. Second, predictive insights that makes you say, hey, someone's watching over my financials. So personalization, something that tells you, hey, did you notice that your gym membership price just went up 20%? Did you even know that? It's like, oh, I didn't know that. I probably wouldn't have seen it till maybe the end of the month. Maybe it would have slipped through the cracks. But now I have something that's analytically looking at my transaction and providing that. So this combination of digitization, natural language, and predictive insights is what's driven the transition from 80% to 99% for us.
Full disclosure, I have to say, Erica is my BFF.
All right.
Use her all the
Love
time.
it. I'll sell you the money later.
Thank you. Ravi, you talked about wanting to meet the customer where they want to be serviced. So explain that and how you're using technology to leverage that.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Great to be here and have this opportunity to talk to all of you. When you think of American Express, you probably think of customer service, and customer-focused innovation has been in our DNA for a very long time. And we think about our goal is to provide the world's best customer service. And it's not just the digital customer service. It could be in moments of truth, like Hari said, when someone wants to be on a phone, wants to talk to somebody. So we think about this as meeting the customers where they want to be, where they are. And this is increasingly digital, like you heard from other panelists. So we've invested a lot in our digital technologies, from mobile to chat, and have injected AI and Gen AI into those. But it's also being proactive. And if we suspect that there is possible fraud activity on your account, we'll send you a message, either in the app or we will text you. That's like meeting customers in their real life where they are on something that they care about. But in those moments of truth, the customer care professionals, as we call it, we equip them with technology to provide the best possible service. This is like technology-powered relationship servicing, as we call it. And I'll give you a quick example on each. If you call our travel counselor Assist, they have AI and Gen AI technology that helps them give you faster, more personalized, more relevant type of travel itineraries, if you're calling them, and there's Gen AI behind that. If you happen to talk to one of our service professionals, they have access to Gen AI summarization of not only the current call as it's happening, but also prior conversations. People often call for a problem that they had before, and this just makes it more delightful for the customer not to have to repeat what they just said before in a prior call. So these are some examples of ways in which we think that the mission is to provide the world's best customer experience, largely digital, powered by technology, but it is ultimately about the relationship.
And Jody, I want to get into you about how it's changing things, how it's changing the way your associates work, how it's changing the customer experience. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that has been, and I love what you said about putting the customer at the forefront, because really technology, as Seth said, should not be leading the discussion. The customer needs, the associate needs are really what should be leading the discussion. And so from a customer, through the customer lens, personalizing the experience so that it is seamless for customers to accomplish their goals has been a huge priority for us. We are leveraging a massive data asset and putting both AI and machine learning on top of that so that we can serve up, I mean, this is sort of an outstanding number, but about 2 trillion personalized recommendations every year to customers. And it's something as simple as making sure when you're searching for milk on Kroger, if you're someone who drinks oat milk, you're going to see oat milk, right? So how do you, in such a busy world that we live in, remove any of those points of friction to help consumers accomplish their goals? That's one way across our digital experience where it's coming to life. On the associate side, as I mentioned before, we have a huge associate base, and there are these very manual, sort of repeatable processes that have to happen to run a company like Kroger. We are working to automate as many of those as possible. And what happens when you do that is you transform both the, sort of efficiency of the company in terms of how you can do things like having associates check their schedule and so forth, but you also enhance the job for the associate or for the employee. They now have had friction removed. The work that they get to do every day gets sort of elevated to something where it's either engaging and serving customers, working more strategically. So we're really seeing very strong benefits on both the consumer and associate side.
What about routing trucks? I mean, there's so many
Yes, perfect examples. So you can imagine the intersection of, think of a delivery order.
Right.
So you're placing a grocery delivery order. You have all of this wonderful technology that's helping a customer build a basket, create, the trip that they need to accomplish. At the same time, we're needing to look at the routing of all the orders from customers in a certain geography so that we can optimize getting it to them as efficiently and as quickly as possible. Both are great examples of the technology serving the customer need and the business need.
Now, Hari, how do you find that right mix? We were talking about Erica. How do you find that right mix of human and machine at the same time?
Yeah, a couple of points, and we'll talk about routing something else, which is incoming phone calls, right?
Yes,
so,
yes.
So you get into a situation where at some point you call.
Okay.
The first thing is, can you actually predict why the customer will be calling? And the answer is, with the 360 view, you have your customers. You should have a sense that it's most probably Hari, because it's the last couple of numbers he called in from. I just noticed as a fraud alert to Ravi's example. Okay. And the chances are he's calling about that. So can I just offer him an option to just ping him back and saying, hey, I can offer you a real-time message on your app that you can take care of yourself. So you don't even need to talk to a human being. Not because we don't want to talk to you, but it's faster and cheaper and simpler for you to take care of it. But assuming you get past that, then the question becomes, how do you route now to the agent who's actually going to be able to help you the fastest? And then when you get to that agent, how do you look at the call summarization, look at all the information, and put it in the hands of the agent to actually help you as effectively? As we went on the journey, we realized customers love certain parts of it, but some of it they aren't as comfortable with. So you have to always listen. You have to look at sentiment analysis. You can look at that through understanding the Erica interactions. Like, what was the sentiment? Task completion. When someone started to do something, did they get lost? Did they get stuck in a loop? So it's really important to actually mine the information as customers interact with you. And finally, customer satisfaction surveys, good old-fashioned things. We actually survey our customers on a regular basis. And we've taken our top 2-box satisfaction. Customers who give us 9 or 10 out of 10, from about 54% about 7 years ago to 89% now. And a lot of that is because, again, this constant listening to, I think both of you mentioned customer. Listening to customers, seeing the sentiments of the interaction, understanding what they're telling you, explicitly asking them, and then fine-tuning and iterating your platform to cater to their needs.
If you don't mind me building on that, I think the customer piece is so critical, but you also hit on something else that I just wanted to sort of underscore, which is continuous optimization. So I think Seth mentioned it before, you're never done. Right? So always listening to the data, the signals, and understanding that when you're building these experiences, you have to be committed to always continually optimizing, whether it's your actual models or the experience itself. But the mindset of projects that launch and you're done and it's launch and leave, those days are over if you want to get full value from the business.
And I like how you bring that up and I like how you continue to survey your customers, because sometimes you do get, I'm not saying it's not with Bank of America, but you're talking with someone, you're like, representative, I've had enough. Like, just get me.
A big part of what we want to do is never a dead end, right? There should never be a dead end. There's always, and one of the things we added, for example, is chat.
Yeah.
Because we felt is rather than pick up the phone and now talk to someone, what if you had Erica chat, and you said like, no, I really want to talk to a person. Or we think you need a human. Let's bring the human into a chat session right there. Both of you see where you stand. Help out. Step out, the human steps out, and then Erica. So it all kind of has to blend seamlessly. It's not either or, it's the end that comes together.
Exactly. Ravi, I want to get to you. You talked about different advantages, what it's doing to help out, but I'm sure it's not always easy. I mean, what are some of the roadblocks that you faced along the way, and what kind of advice can you give to people sitting out here who maybe say, you know what, we've tried it, we've dipped our toe in the water, now we want to jump in. So what advice can you give?
It's a great question, Lisa. I'll probably start with just how we approached it. We approached it by first recognizing, at least in the context of Gen AI, it is a secular change. It is something that's going to have impact. The timeline of its impact and the extent of the impact can be hard to predict, but you kind of have the conviction that that's something important to do. We also had a conviction we needed to test and learn, and we wanted to figure out what was most important to get right. I know Seth ended the last session by talking about governance. I'd probably broaden it by saying, what's the framework by which you're going to do these experiments, you're going to test and learn. So from the beginning, we had colleagues from legal compliance, as much as we had colleagues from digital labs, technology, cybersecurity was at the table. So you're trying to think through, even as you are creating a methodology to test and learn, how are you thinking about the framework of risk? How are you thinking about being assured that what you're doing is not going to cause any inadvertent customer harm? So we call this whole approach as like enterprise enablement, something that focuses on creating reusable component services that allow you to quickly test and learn, swap things out. A different large language model could be better than one you thought was good like a week ago. That's the pace at which things move, if not like in days. So that approach of having a mindset that you're testing and learning, but with an appropriate risk framework, has allowed us to both go fast when we need to, where we think there is value, but also take some time to get some of the risk parameters right. Like we had to take time to build an AI firewall that kind of protects between our people and applications and the large language models that they are working with, as an example. We had to think through, in a highly regulated environment that Hari and I are in, how do we do model governance? What does model governance mean when you're using large language models? So these are things that shouldn't necessarily stop progress, but you do need to figure them out along the way as you're doing this. And we also took an approach on building on top of the frameworks we had. So sometimes there's a temptation to say, this is new, let's create a whole risk framework. We just added on to the frameworks we had before, and we had to do additional things in those. So those are probably some of the examples of the things we did, and I would offer as advice, get that enablement right so you can scale in an appropriate way, as opposed to just get a couple of like quick wins and then you're stuck.
And Lisa, I think one thing when you're talking about scale that is important, and when you talk about a proof of concept or testing and learning, one of the lessons that I think a number of companies are realizing now is, unless you are testing and understanding the cost associated with a proof of concept, you can have a very painful surprise when you hit scale. There is a real cost associated with leveraging technologies like AI, and if you are not planning for that and baking that into your ROI up front, it can be very challenging to actually manage at the scale level. So being really proactive about that,
Not
I think
to
is
hijack
critical.
the question here, right? But I think that's both a functional cost, but also sometimes non-functional. If your salespeople want a client memo prepared in a second, and they click on demand and want to generate these client memo preps, that's a cost. But most of the time, they're not going to a meeting a second from now. If you just can say, look, I'm going to batch this thing and tomorrow morning it's available to you, that's a completely different cost. So really understanding cost and ROI. It's too early. I know nobody has perfect ROI models, so no one's suggesting there's a magic template. But you can get expensive very fast. And unless you sort of look at both the functional and non-functional needs going into it, you're going to end up with the trough of disillusionment hit you much faster than you think.
Yeah, and I think the foundational components in getting them right and knowing what they are is pretty important. Another one is data. I think the last session that came up. You can do a lot of these other things, but if you don't have a good data platform, good data governance, then you're going to get disappointed pretty quickly.
Yeah, Jody, you spoke about that when we talked earlier about
Yes.
the problem, the difficulties with it.
I mean, working on your upstream, without good data, there is no AI, right? Like you're going to have garbage in, garbage out. So investing upstream in, do you have clean data? Do you have, thoughtful data domains where you have a single source of truth in key areas around the company, where it's a one-to-many relationship, is so foundational to this whole dialogue. Without it, you are not going to accomplish the value that you're looking for.
Most definitely. Robbie, what changes do you think need to be made in the future as technology starts to advance? Because we have a question from the audience. It kind of goes along with it. How are organizations thinking about evolving training, development for people in the age of AI?
Yeah. I would definitely start by a comment that was made earlier, right? Raising the digital acumen, I would probably extend it to say just raising the AI acumen, right? It's going to come to all roles in all of our enterprises. So ensuring that people are able to take advantage of it, but also know how to protect against the risks of it, right? It's also going to show up in like a risk vector too. So our training approach on this, or our upskilling approach, has been multifaceted, right? You just can't do one thing. There is like structured learning. We've had enterprise learning days on AI. We use Slack internally, so we have Slack channels where lots of people are actively on, and there is AI information there. There is like communities of practice. So I don't think of this upskilling as like one thing you do. It's a variety of things you do, and it's a version of like meeting your employees and colleagues where they are.
Yeah, and Hari, how do you see that developing, internally, in-house? Because sometimes the right skill set people aren't out there yet. It's still an evolving technology. So how do you train those in-house?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of pieces to it. One is even to know what to apply this to.
Okay.
Requires us to understand, because you can easily throw this thing at the most mundane process, right? If someone does content summarization for 0.2% of their time, and you think, wouldn't it be cool to deploy a content summarizer? You could spend $1 gazillion and get 0.2% of like fingers and toes of people. And that's not going to yield outcomes. So I think having the organization sort of understand, first of all, what do we do? What are our activities? What are our tasks? And then having technologists and business teammates coming together and saying, what's the art of the possible that you can now apply through these advancements in technology to these activities and tasks? So you can go after the problem sets that are taking up 20% of your time, 25% of your time. And now if you can make that part 50% more productive, now you're talking about 10% to the bottom line, right? Now we're talking about real numbers. Mm-hmm. I think we have to just all elevate. The technologists have to elevate to understand business activities and tasks. The business teammates have to elevate to understand the art of the possible. And the best way to do that is kind of bringing together more and more of them into these kind of innovation and ideation sessions.
Yeah. I think you are calling out such an important point around, there is this, everyone's enamored with, we got to find a way to use AI. And I work across all of our business teams, and everyone wants to find something to do with AI. When in reality, you're exactly right. We have to flip it and say, what are the most important problems for us to solve, right? What are those things that are going to transform the company, deliver fantastic ROIs, but start with the problem, don't start with the technology. And to the degree that we can get all of our business partners thinking that way, because it ends up being, a very collaborative approach to the problems we need to solve, the value we're going to create, and then how the tech enables it. That embedding that mindset in your organizations is critical for you to be successful.
So once you get there, how do you decide, build versus buy? I mean, how do you decide where to go?
Yeah, so I'll share my perspective, but I think it is a case-by-case basis. I think understanding, we live in a world now where I don't think there's one clear answer. It's about creating ecosystems. Mm-hmm. And so it can be ecosystems with multiple cloud partners, multiple tech partners, internal, and really finding for each problem that you're trying to solve, take the time to go through that evaluation. Is it a build by partner rather than just leaning towards your preference? Ultimately, you'll end up with a much more compelling ecosystem of capabilities if you take the time to do that.
And that's why the enablement layer that I talked about earlier is particularly important, right? Because it allows you that flexibility to decide when you're going to build, when you're going to buy, when you're going to change what you're buying. So getting that part right will go a long way towards not being stuck on any one of these models.
Yeah, particularly at a time that things are changing, to your point, on a daily basis, right? Yeah, I think our general strategy is if it's truly commodity, we're not going to go try to build commodity things. On the other hand, more and more of these things, the customer experience actually matters. The user experience matters. And the more it really matters to the customer that the data is right, it's protected, it's secure, you've looked at the model to make sure there's no bias, the more that it sounds like it's a differentiator, that's where probably we lean to building. And if it's more and more that it smells like it's commodity, you pretty much buy. And to Ravi's point, you just ideally abstract it so you can make those decisions.
Now, Hardy, where do you see the technology going? Like, what would you like it to do that it's not currently doing?
I think it is very fast to prototype things right now.
Okay.
You can like do POCs up the storm, right? You can kind of go in there and, I haven't written code in a long time, but I could probably go home and cook up something in like an hour.
Nice.
That's so easy. But commercializing is a different story. And commercializing involves lots of things. What are your guardrails? How do you make sure the thing is performing as you expect it to this week versus last week? Is it going off the rails because 7 other questions got asked, right? How do you scale this for volume? What is the cost of deployment? Back to what's the ROI on the thing? There's a lot of things. So I think having better frameworks, both within companies around governance and systemic frameworks around guardrails and transparency and instrumentation and data privacy, I think there's a lot to be. I mean, it's night and day from what it was 3 years ago. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we sought to build 2 years ago that have already become commodity. 2 years from now, some of the other new things are going to become commodity. We just have to keep a close eye, but there's a long way to go, easier to prototype, easier to do proof of concept, much more difficult to commercialize at large scale right now.
Perfect. And Ravi, I'll pass along the question from the audience. What's next for AI? What do you see coming up next?
I think there are 2 things at least on our radar. One got mentioned earlier, the notion of autonomous agents. And I think there is a journey from how AI is being used today with a human in the loop for point activities to something that over time evolves into multiple related things being put together by autonomous agents. But it'll be a journey. I think for a while there'll be humans in the loop. We'll have to get confident. So imagine in our case, not only at some point you could check your membership rewards balance, or you could ask about your options for travel, you could book a travel. What if you could all say like, hey, if I had enough points, my preferences, book my ticket, right? And it
All
books
in
a
one
Delta
shot,
ticket.
just there.
So there is a journey there that's exciting, but it'll take time, and there is certainly human in the loop for a while. The other thing I would say is the marriage of AI capabilities with data that customers entrust firms with. You have to earn that trust to have the data. We are fortunate as Amex to have great breadth and depth of data that we are trusted with, but you have to use it for the benefit of the customer, and you have to use it consistent with your brand.
Perfect. And Jody, I'll end with you. What are you excited about? Where do you see it going?
Well, I guess not to repeat what others have said, I'll come up with something different. I think if I look at a company like Kroger, and maybe at many of your companies, some of the most impactful things we do are at the enterprise level. They cross domains in the organization. It's bringing marketing, merchandising, supply chain together. Today, it is a challenge to leverage AI across domains, to have a multi-domain approach. So I'm hopeful in the next couple of years, we are going to have much more elegant solutions that can really enable bigger experience changes, bigger business model changes, because they actually cross domains.
Excellent. Thank you guys very much. One more time for our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Edward Adams from Bloomberg Media Studios, and I'm joined today by Gary Kodovets, who is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Dun & Bradstreet, and in full disclosure, former colleague of mine here at Bloomberg.
Yes.
As I'm sure most of this room knows, Dun & Bradstreet has information about approximately 590 million companies. And you really operate sort of at the intersection of sales and purchases, right? I mean, you help people decide who they're going to purchase goods from, and you help them find out who they should be selling to. And we're going to be talking about the procurement end of that today.
Yep.
Right? And you've got a new product out in the market, I think only about a month, called Ask Procurement, that is based on AI and run on a fundamental AI platform. But explain to me, what was the problem that you were trying to solve with this product? Why create?
Sure. So thanks for having me here. I'm having all kinds of deja vus of being in this room. A lot of my board presentations were here, so it's kind of really strange being here back again. But back to your question, so procurement professionals and supply chain managers are really one of our key use cases, right? So we service those customers by providing them essentially assessments on risk as it relates to managing or onboarding and managing their suppliers. You know, we have existing data, we have products that we have been providing these customers for the last many, many years. And really, when Gen AI started to come out and become much more of a commodity, we thought this would be one of the perfect use cases to address because there's inefficiencies in some of those processes. There's a lot of time that's spent in as it relates to, identifying a supplier, onboarding a supplier, and then monitoring them. And procurement teams are always kind of after finding efficiencies and saving money and costs. So we thought this would be the perfect use case.
So the way it's worked up to now is you port your data into the procurement solution that I'm using at company X, right?
That's right.
And then if I'm going to be looking for a supplier of good X, Y, and Z from the following location, I need to do a bunch of different searches within that, right?
That's right.
How is this product different from what the old product was?
So there's two products, basically. There's one which is really the data that's fed into, let's say, an SAP or an Oracle procurement system. And inside that application, they consume our data to make some of those decisions. There's a lot of steps that they would have to go through, depending on the application, depending on the steps that the application sort of pushes them to make inside their environment. The other capability is really our own front-end sort of user interface. In a similar fashion, you would essentially have to run a report with a bunch of filters, with a bunch of criteria, et cetera, and then it gives you kind of a more holistic view of, or actually a list of suppliers that, for example, you're looking to go after, or suppliers that are alternative to the supplier that you're already using, or, for example, you want to understand current information about the supplier that you're already dealing with, and you want to come in and again, run those searches and run those criteria and then generate a report for yourself.
And the product that you've created relies more on natural language searching, is that right?
That's right. And so just like many of the, thank God I didn't have to answer a lot of the questions that you guys already answered because I don't want to sound repetitive, but this was, again, a perfect use case because you're able to ask that question in natural language and get all those answers provided to you and kind of highlighted to you right out of the gate within seconds.
Yeah. When we were talking before we came on stage, one of the things that you said that interested me was in the early stages of developing this new product, you're talking to your clients, you're actually learning things from your clients that you didn't fully appreciate up until that point, right? Give me a sense of sort of what that was like.
Sure. So, we're just like many other data providers or application providers. We're used to servicing up our data in certain ways, as I mentioned, and you're not really kind of, I would say, trying to drill into every single micro task or micro step that they take in order to get to their answer that they're looking for, right? As we've gotten much deeper and started to engage with them, we realized that there's a lot of micro steps that they have to take and questions they have to ask and things they have to validate. Reference back to documentation and other sources of information in order to get to the answer. And so as we engaged them, we started to realize that those micro tasks or those steps could all be sort of consolidated or alleviated, and those mundane tasks can also be, removed, right, as a result of giving them this new capability.
And as you described what you were trying to do with AI in this product to people before they actually had something to touch and feel, they had this aha moment, you said.
Yeah.
Right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so this was an interesting process, and as we engaged and started to talk about, what can Gen AI do for you, obviously, I think there's a lot of people here in the room probably have experienced. Nobody knew what it was, but everybody wanted to use it, right? So everybody was running towards it, but it was very difficult for them to figure out where to apply it. And so as we started to engage and talk to customers, we realized that we have to kind of change and shift a little bit our conversation and really make it more about the education of Gen AI as it is about the requirements gathering in terms of what they want us to build. And so when you spend the time to explain to them the value and educate them on the use case in where this could be most applicable and where they get the largest ROI, they get that aha moment. And then they start to volunteer much more information, so they make your job a lot easier.
Interesting. So give me a sense of sort of what is, from your beta testing and from the early commercial use of this, what has been the return on investment for your clients when they're using the product?
So we almost very recently launched it. We have our client zero is actually IBM, so we'll talk about that a little more. And they have a very large procurement team, and the feedback has been very positive. And we've seen anywhere from 10 to 20% in terms of return investment from a productivity standpoint. And so that's a very significant number when you think about, again, the procurement team, and obviously they vary in size, but regardless, for them, this is a big saver.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned IBM is a client of this, but they also were the people you turned to help develop it.
That's right.
There are obviously an awful lot of people you could have gone to trying to develop an AI product like this one. Why IBM?
So IBM is a very special and unique partner for us, and it's many different kind of dimensions. They're not just a technology provider, so obviously they are. We used our watsonx across a lot of our capabilities, a lot of our build. We use watsonx Orchestrate to build this capability. They're also a partner because we co-build this product together with them. And they're also, as I mentioned, the consumer of this product, but they're also a reseller of this product. So there's many different kind of opportunities and aspects that we see where where the opportunity with IBM was, again, very special and unique from all these different perspectives.
We heard from an earlier panelist that AI is not just a destination, it's a journey. Mm-hmm. And that's true also with this application, right? I mean, you've got the first stage of it out there for people to use, but give us a sense of sort of where you see it going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so from a Dun & Bradstreet in terms of services that we provide, so I mentioned in terms of the data that we give to our customers, but we're also a data management solution. So we allow our clients to give us a lot of their data. We help them clean it, normalize it. We help them match it to a DUNS number. And really from there, they're able to then append that our data with their data, right? So that way they get a more complete picture of their counterparty, whether it's a customer or a supplier. And now think about taking all that data and putting it, overlaying Gen AI capability over it, and Ask Procurement now gives them, such as Ask Procurement, would give them a more holistic view of their supplier that not just brings in third-party data like Dun & Bradstreet, but also their own. And so that's really how we see kind of where the next phase of this is evolving and where we see the largest opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, Gary, thank you for sharing your experience today.
Thanks for
Welcome back to Bloomberg. Please, on your way out, don't steal any of those things, okay?
Thank you.
Okay,
Good evening, everyone. I think what we have heard so far, it's quite interesting in terms of AI and the use cases. I think this session will be more about productivity and profitability, more focused towards Gen AI, as we were discussing backstage. And I'm really excited to be joined by Mahesh Bhagwati from PepsiCo and Yao Maureen from GLL. So we'll get two very different perspectives, one from a CPG company and a real estate company. And perhaps that's a good starting point. You know, what is it that you guys have done so far in terms of Gen AI deployment? And everyone is focused on scale here. So is it something that you can elaborate on in terms of what you have done so far? Yao, I'll throw it to you first.
Absolutely. You know, surprisingly, commercial real estate actually needs a lot of technology to run, and also at the heart of it is a lot of data. So and also one of the challenges for commercial real estate to use data is a lot of unstructured data, as well as the data is global. So Gen AI is really one of the scaler for us, and then one of the unlocker for us in terms of leveraging those data for internal usage, as well as external for our clients. So in terms of what we have deployed so far, really in the hands of tens and thousands of employees in JLL, we have JLL GPT, which is an internal tool where that is plugged in to our enterprise data platform, that our employees can really converse with it, get our data at their fingertips. We also recently launched JL Falcon, which is our AI platform. And this is something that we are very, very excited about. It's something that we will help really scale our production of AI applications, because we believe that not only we want to be able to build one AI application at a time, but we have hundreds and thousands of clients. So we want to build AI applications for our clients, leverage this JL Falcon. There's another reinvention of our data analytics tool where, to Gary's point, I don't know where Gary is, but like to use natural language to really query a lot of the data behind the scenes, so that our clients can get the data very, very quickly and get insights at the speed that they can't before.
Mahesh?
Yeah, from our perspective at PepsiCo, we've done a lot of POCs, right? And I think you get to a point where there's just POC fatigue, specifically in the Gen AI space. But when we talk about profitability and we're talking about productivity, it's really at scale. When we talk about PepsiCo, right, we touch 1.4 billion experiences, consumers, on a daily basis. That's a lot of people across the globe, across 200 countries, right? And we love it. And I'm sure you all love it as well. I'm sure, how many of you have had Gatorade across the room?
Sure, everyone.
Everyone, right? So thank you. So we love that too. So one of the examples I wanted to give, which is not a POC, but something that's operating at scale, is, you know, it's if you go to Gatorade.com now, you can actually access a Gen AI really operating at scale. So you can actually now customize your bottle, and as you're getting ready for the holiday season. Now, I might sound like Seth talked about, I'm crossing domains, but that's okay. It's really about now really getting customized solutions, in this case a Gatorade bottle, and being able to offer it to your loved ones during the holiday season.
You're not using an LLM for that. Come on, that's not an LLM use
We
case,
actually are using an LLM.
Okay.
So we're actually using multiple large language models on the back end, by which you can actually go get your, you can type in your request. Now, of course, you can do some customizations, and you can also get your name as well. And then, of course, we've actually partnered with the bottler that actually does 3D printing.
Okay.
And you can actually get it shipped over to your home. So yes, we are using large language models, and yes, we're using it at scale. And this, I think, is kind of the power of what the opportunities of the future can be from a revenue perspective, right?
Okay, I'm sorry if I interrupted your response, but the question I have for both of you actually is 18 months back, nobody was talking about generative AI and LLMs.
Yep.
So this is something, obviously, this is new. And I'm guessing you guys have had to do a course correct in terms of embedding this new technology that came out of nowhere, and now you're deploying it for these type of use cases. So just maybe help everyone understand what is it that you needed to change in terms of your plans 18 months back versus deploying this very quickly in short amount of time. And I don't know who wants to take the lead.
I can go first. For us, it's less of a course correct, but really fast, really responding to the trend very quickly, and then trying to understand the limitations of where the technology is, right? Obviously, to Magesh's point, at the beginning, everyone is experimenting. We have a lot of POCs going on, but at the end, like as you continue to explore where the boundary is, what the limitations is, what is, you know, what do we need to put as a guardrail perspective, then the production, the putting more AI features into production becomes very fast. Obviously, I think Gary also mentioned that earlier, it's like the training perspective of it. At the beginning, we were worried about, employees may not trust it, employees may not want to use it, but like with a lot of resources and education internally about what it can do and what it can't, and that becomes the adoption becomes really fast within the company to start.
Were they worried about losing their job while they were adopting it?
Yeah, I think they're just like any new things. Normally, you will see fear, right? That's just human nature. However, I think as they are using it, again, like unless you use it, unless you really truly understand what it can do, then you start to understand it's an enhancer, not a replacer. And then I think that enhancement of efficiency and productivity is where, you know, I know JLL is really focusing on, and also I know that a lot of enterprises are experiencing that kind of productivity gain, which is quite exciting.
Nagesh?
Yeah, from our perspective at PepsiCo, now technology is a layer cake. And I think many of the previous panelists really talked about how they've gone about this journey, right? So we've all seen the advent of the internet, we've seen the advent of the cloud, we've seen the advent of the iPhone, we've seen the advent of big data, we've seen the advent of data science. And so what we've done at PepsiCo was really take a platform approach and a modular platform approach. A number of our partners have actually helped us with this platform approach. So to give you an example, I mean, we've got cloud operating at scale, as most of us are, so we're multi-cloud. We've got applications. Quite a few of them are significantly modern, but we've actually embarked on a massive ERP journey, so that's actually providing us that really foundational capability across our length and breadth of PepsiCo. Now we're actually going after one enterprise data foundation. This one's a little difficult, specifically when you've got different business units that have a lot of independence and autonomy. You're really trying to get them to one data foundation is difficult. And then on top of that, you've got AI Factory, you've got the AI Factory ecosystem, you've also got an ecosystem that provides data science. And so once you have that, and over the time, we've also started building capabilities like IoT, computer vision, and other and now PepGenix as our own internal abstraction layer, like Seth mentioned. Then your ability to go fast really is because you've invested the foundational capability over decades, right? Now, there's also one more piece as well. I think most of the previous panelists talked about is legacy. You've got to be just ruthless, really, about going after application rationalization, systems rationalization, environment rationalization, and at the same time, really upskilling your workforce and also really raising the bottom talent. So it's a collective effort, and I think kind of the modern CIO and the extended CIO family kind of has over time actually figured this out. So that's why I don't think this is that big of a pivot as much as I thought it would be.
Also, I remember at the beginning of like all this Gen AI stuff blows up. And I remember a comic that I saw on LinkedIn, and it was CEO saying that I want AI, and then the technologist was like, oh my God, where is our data? and then nobody, like the data piece is really very, very important foundation, because like everyone, the barrier of using Gen AI it's pretty low right now. But I see that if you have your own data or you don't have your own data, makes the difference between a high schooler versus an expert in a certain field. I think that's where I think companies need to think about is like, are you trying to just like providing a productivity tool, or are you really trying to drive specific goals with Gen AI?
And actually, I remember one of the prior panelists, they mentioned these models are more for pattern recognition than for reasoning. What do you guys think?
See, today, I think the large language models are there for pattern recognition. And then, of course, when they started off, these models were billions of parameters. Now, as you go into GPT-4o, et cetera, you're now talking about trillions of parameters from a training perspective. So yes, I think the models that's actually coming out right now are also reasoning models as well, because there is that much data that's being fed on, plus the volume of models that's there out there. If you go to a place like Hugging Face, you're going to see just a plethora of models. So then you add large language models, small language models, domain-specific models. Then what ends up happening is that your opportunity to experiment dramatically increases. The question is, can your organization keep up with that level of innovation that's happening from a technology landscape? At the same time, can you now really, is there truly a need for reasoning at this point in time when you've not even figured out large language models or small language models? Is something that we all have to ask. I think going back to a lot of my panelists is, why? The big question is, why?
So how much time are you spending in terms of evaluating the capabilities of these models? Is GPT better than Gemini or than any other small language model? Is that something that's part of your day-to-day kind of workflow?
Absolutely. So I've got a dedicated team, and we've actually got a new head of AI on my team, and the organization is broken into one, AI solutions for PepsiCo, AI platforms, and then really around evangelism and finding new use cases. And if you find new use cases, really, how do we drive it at scale? So it's an investment we chose to make because we started realizing that, if you want to talk about AI first, it's sweet to talk about it, it's cute to talk about it. But really, are you going to make anything fundamental out of it is a big question, right? So in order to make something fundamental out of it, we've actually gone through a pretty significant organizational change as well within PepsiCo. So I report into the Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer, Athena, and underneath her is not only all the technology functions, but it's also all the business transformation leaders as well. Finance, commercial, consumer, and it's also the sector. How do we land these capabilities and how do we make them relevant for the sector? So you take it through the full life cycle all the way from why you need it to how you're building it to how you're deploying it and then really driving adoption in the field. And this is super hard, and unless you make process changes, organizational changes, and fundamental business transformation, you cannot drive this digital transformation.
What about you, yeah?
Cannot agree more. I think a lot of this productivity gain and profitability gain will have to accompany with, change of how we do business, change of some of the operating models, and really, in addition to adoptions. And then I truly believe that those two go hand in hand. You can't just have a technology organization just sitting there like thinking about, hey, how do we use AI, right? It doesn't work that way. It's really need to embed into the business transformational process in order to really get that ROI out of AI.
Are your IT budgets going up as a result of all these investments in generative AI?
That's a sensitive topic. But I do, just like anything, it doesn't come for free, and it's prudent to understand the investment and also making sure, like you measure the returns. right? I think at the beginning you can have all this hype, like I will give you a blank check, you just do AI, right? Very quickly, then we will be asked, hey, how do you measure success? How do you show me the millions of dollars I put in can give me the value? And I think that's also a lot of the enterprise technologists, right? The CIOs and CTOs are talking about. It's like, well, yes, I know that like some of these tools are helping our people, but exactly how does that turn the helping the people, giving them productivity, turn into the bottom line? I think that is like something that we will continue to evolve and really show value of AI.
What about Magesh? You guys have deeper pockets. So.
Right, with deeper pockets come greater responsibility. And you know, one of the things is that we've got to eat our own dog food, right? So definitely, I mean, we're the ones who are introducing all these amazing technologies. And if that's the case, we've got to be the first ones to eat our dog food. And so when you're saying that there's an opportunity to go some 20, 30% in terms of developer productivity, data science productivity, engineering productivity, and then overall, I would say technology productivity itself.
But those are all back-end use cases.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, but you said first taking down the IT budget. So I'm just going after that component, saying, okay, I've got to eat my dog food and really show dramatic efficiency on my end. So now and then reinvest back into the AI engineering capabilities and data science engineer and data science capabilities, right? So with that reinvestment, how do you really go after productivity? And so let me give you an example, right? So we have almost 380,000 acres of farmland for potato farming across the globe, and for us, it's really.
I didn't know Pepsi has potato in it.
Oh yeah, Dorito. I mean, we do Lay's, and so we sell almost 2 billion Lay's chips
on the other
on
side
a regular basis. So we've got the other side almost, the whole Frito-Lay business.
I don't want carbs in my soda.
We'll figure out something for that. Gen AI, I'm sure, can't do anything as of right now.
Yeah.
But so as we start looking at the farm, there's a ton of productivity from a farmer's perspective in terms of, one, how do I get targeted pest control and pest management? How do I make sure I'm dramatically reducing the needs for herbicide within mine? And then how can I really use water far more efficiently? We've seen with the applying of, for example, satellite imagery, almost a 25% reduction in water usage in many of our farms. And that's directly attributed to how data science, traditional AI, is playing a pretty significant role in being able to drive not only productivity, but also sustainability benefits. But most importantly now, the farmers starting to get digital tech acumen, and that process really raising, as I think Seth was saying, everybody goes from being a worker to really becoming a knowledge worker, right? That transition is quite significant because of Gen AI, because I think it's an equal opportunity enabler, unlike most of the other prior techs in my opinion.
I want to end with a question that I think a lot of the folks in the audience are also trying to figure out. Are there any ethical concerns when it comes to deploying generative AI specifically? I don't know who wants to go first.
Go ahead.
Sure. I think definitely, right? One, as your consumers and even your customers, so for example, we're a B2B2C business, right? And as they start using generative AI and the capability of generative AI, they want to make sure that what they are receiving as a data set is truly trustworthy, right? So we've got to be able to work with business partners to make sure that this response is not trustworthy. So that's the piece. So for which not only do you actually have to have a very strong responsible AI framework, like most of the prior panelists talked, you also need to actually have observability as well. Because once there is bias, once there is an issue with their even accuracy, most often people start turning back and saying, let me just go back to my traditional method. So that's the big thing that we've got to be careful about: bias, ethics, and really making sure it's truly responsible AI. I think we're not there. We've got ways to go as a collective community.
Do you think the next version of GPT or Llama or Gemini would do better in terms of the ethical component?
I think the jury is still out there, in my opinion. I think we talked about the human in the loop. We talked about observability and really strong AI observability capabilities that understands your data, but also understands the data it's being trained on. I think we've got some ways to go as a community.
I also think that the responsibility is not just lies on the foundation model producers, right? It's like, in any enterprise, for example, in JLL, we have ethical use guideline for using any Gen AI products, and you have to click on the button saying that I agree before you can use it. But I do want to advocate for a flip side of this ethical question, and then maybe we can end this panel in a positive note.
Yeah, we should.
It's that, this is a very heartwarming story for me, and then I continue to remember this as a reminder of what I'm working for, which is we started to roll out JLGPT, and then we were just expecting some feedbacks about how they're using it or whatever. But then when we started to hear from employees with ADHD, employees whose first language is not English, or have issues with communications, and they started to say, hey, thank you for giving me this tool, because it actually leveled the playing field for me. And so there is the good side of AI that we don't often talk about because it doesn't catch people's eyes, but actually, even as English as a second language speaker, I use Gen AI all the time to improve my writing and presentation as well. So I think that helping our employees in various able employees can really can be part of what AI can bring.
Yeah.
And bring positive side of the ethical problem.
Do you want to highlight any other positive sides, Magesh? I'll have you the final word.
I mean, I think definitely language translation is one. The benefit to the farmers is another. I think the third big thing is we've got a pretty significant factory and warehouse workforce. And they now being a part of this overall knowledge economy can be a significant unlock on the positive side, versus one of the things that we've been talking about.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking my fellow panelists, Magesh and Yao. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good?
Yes, please. All right, we're ready for our next session. Customers are the reason, and no better than the CEO of Verizon Customer Unit, Swaminarayan Sampath. Welcome. Look, you just saw we had a very interesting discussion around deploying generative AI. You guys probably have the biggest scale that I can think of in terms of running a contact center, I believe with over 200 million calls or something like that.
That's 200 million happy customers calling us.
There you go. Yes. That's great. So walk us through your deployment journey in terms of especially leveraging large language models or any other components of generative AI.
Yeah. Thanks for having me here today. Look, I strongly believe that AI/Gen AI is the only deflationary tool we have in our economy for the next 2 decades. Because almost everything that's going to happen in the economy is going to be inflationary. The energy transition is going to be inflationary in the system overall. An aging population is going to be inflationary. More spending on defense budgets generally in the world is going to be inflationary. Last is outsourcing, offshoring has kind of gotten to, I would say, the last 2 innings of the game. So we really don't have, as operators today, any long-term deflationary tool other than Gen AI and AI to get us to our price points where we want to over the next 20 years. So at a bigger concept, I'm very bullish about the technology. Having said that, I strongly believe 99% of all the use cases that people are spending time on right now will never hunt. partly because the CFOs haven't gotten involved yet. Most of the time, we are kind of tending to bypass CFOs because it's a hot thing, everyone wants to do it, and it's very expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, a simple search in Gen AI is 10x more expensive. An image search is 300 times more expensive, and a video search is between 1,000 and 10,000 times more expensive. So I think there's going to be a shaking out of this will happen. It's typical of any new technology. I don't think this is anything unique in the space to do that. Also, most Gen AI technologies right now tend to be very supply-led. We have this great technology. There are a lot of partners trying to push this technology. And then people are like, oh, I want to get on the bandwagon and get involved in it. So I think it's a good thing. There'll be a good shakeout of applications and enterprises. And there'll be 10, 12, 20 really big applications. And I think we are probably going to get to that sometime next year.
So if you mentioned a few things there, which I want to double click on. Clearly cost, it seems like an inhibitor right now. If it was a lower price point, you would be using that in a bigger way. Would that be fair to characterize it?
Look, given our size and scale, we tend to get great deals from everyone. Also, we are at the frontier of a lot of this technology, so that helps us. But going longer term on a BAU basis, I think getting the right price point is going to be important for us larger in this space to scale out at the scale that we want to do. But also for other companies, look, margins are tight. The business case has to be accretive. CFOs are going to get involved, as I said, sooner or later. It's going to get accretive, and that will shake out a lot of use cases that are kind of working through right now.
So in a contact center setting, what will be a very pertinent, use case around changing how you operate your contact center? Like, can you be a little bit more specific?
Maybe I walk through. Let's say, Mandeep, you call me because what a great service I provide. Let's say you call into a contact center. As soon as you call into a contact center, we use AI to route the call to the right agent. And we get 6 to 10% better outcomes when we route to the right person. And the routing is based on your interaction last time, what service you use now, what plans you have. It may even go as deep as, are you a Disney fan because we sell Disney? Then we'll have someone who knows Star Wars, can talk to you about that. So we have thousands of different things that we put in. So step one, we route it to the right agent. That's a big thing. As soon as we route it to the agent, in real time, listening to you, we get live dynamic offers in front of the agent.
Okay.
Based on Gen AI, like, hey, you think we need to do this, you need to do this. And let's say you take a tone which is you're angry, irritable. A lot of those offers will die down because last thing we want to do is sell you something when you're in irritable mode to do that. So there's deep AI that we use in that space. In parallel, your supervisor of the call center rep is monitoring your call on a sentiment basis today. What's your sentiment? Are you using words you shouldn't? Are you raising your voice? Is your tone not right? And then we track it. And you can see sometimes things get out of hand. The supervisor will jump in and say, hey, Sampath, why don't I take it forward from here? Have a great day. So that's a place we use AI as well. Going forward, we do it as a coaching tool. Every call we do is recorded. We say for quality and training purposes, this is that thing. We record every call, transcribe it, and every morning I get an email on what the sentiment was for the customers the night before. Earlier, I had to call agents, I had to call managers in the field. Now we use Gen AI to do that summary for me.
Are you using these models, and I don't know if you are using any of the foundational LLMs, out of the box, or is there a certain amount of fine-tuning involved in terms of how you customize the LLMs?
Look, we do have to customize some of the piece. And then the last one is the call summary, which is really interesting because you've had this 18-minute call with someone, and then you have to put notes into the system. The agent doesn't have to put in notes anymore. So there are like 8 or 9 places in a typical call where we use Gen AI at scale to do that. We tend to get a couple of minutes savings on the call. We invest it back in listening and investing back in sales. But we end up having to customize a lot of our fundamental models to do that piece. Also, I think there's large models, but a lot of our value tends to come in small models as well for us, which you don't need $3 billion to develop. There's smaller things. We can run it off small clusters in one of our clouds or even on-prem sometimes to do that. So I think assuming that you have to use large foundational models for everything probably is not the right thing because it also requires a lot of work. The other piece is a lot of the Gen AI work that's happening is not fully productized yet. It's raw technology that requires a lot of work. So I think over a period of time, we'll see more products, more modular, more plug and play. That'll help with adoption. I don't think we are there yet.
So in terms of deployment, I mean, to my mind, there are two things that are very important. One is obviously your employees need to embrace that change, and the other is the training that goes into rolling it out. So is there any dimension that where you're seeing some friction, or on both dimensions you've been okay?
No, look, I think where I wish I'd done a better job, or I think I need to do a better job, is I also think I'm throwing too much technology at my agents.
Yeah.
I know it's an odd thing to say, because in isolation, each technology is a good thing. But when you add like 10 different things in front of the agent who's sitting in Philippines or in India or in Costa Rica, may not have the full cultural context of what's going on, it's a lot for the agent to digest in a single time. So I think we're going to slow down a little bit and let adoption catch up, let people get more intense into their work, and then over a period of time, we'll come back to adding stuff. So that was one interesting lesson that we learned, which is it's too much. I was in Philippines a couple of weeks ago to talk to my teams, and everyone loved everything for different reasons. But there was a feeling like they were praying I don't talk about a roadmap, because like 7 more things I'm going to talk about. So I picked that up. I pulled that slide off. I think I did a good thing.
That's smart. Were there any ethical or privacy concerns when it comes to making decisions around generative AI?
Yeah, look, we always have human in the loop. I know Magesh talked about that as well. We have human in the loop. We check everything. I take a slightly less dramatic view of the world. I mean, if people want to do bad things, Java can help you do bad things as well. C++ can make you do bad things as well. A small code written in COBOL can make you do something bad. So I don't think Gen AI fundamentally changes the risk profile. What happens is when you get into an agentic format where they start taking decisions in real time with controls that may not in place, that may lead to unintended consequence. So for example, in my world, I want to make the customer really, really happy. Let's say that's the goal. If I take every customer's bill down by 20%, they're going to be incredibly happy.
Yeah.
I may not be here next year, but the customer's going to be incredibly happy to do that. So I think those are some of the issues we're trying to deal with, is where do you give it flexibility, where can it float on its own?
Yeah.
But I'm less stressed about the ethical piece and the other piece, because every technology can be misused from the wheel, for example.
Since you mentioned agent, and that came up in our prior panels as well, how much progress do you think we can make when it comes to this AI agent concept, specifically in the context of what you are doing, like 5 years from now, let's say?
Look, we're going to make incredible progress. What I don't know is, every model is step function better than the previous model. I do think over a period of time, we're going to start seeing that plateau out. Because right now it costs $3 billion to train a model, roughly, with all the costs. People are saying, oh, it costs $20 billion to train a model. I don't think you're going to get 6x, 7x the benefit. I think the scaling may not be linear going forward there. But I think there's enough raw technology right now to last us for business for the next 5 years. Because you got to take it, you got to put it within our process, put it within our workflow, you got to do system integration work. So I don't think raw technology is going to hold back what I want to do. It's just the ability to digest it and put it into the workflow of a company. That's the piece. And what's interesting with this technology is, this is one of those interesting technologies where deployment and what's available has a massive gap. I've never seen a gap in a technology this big. Invariably, it's the other way around. We tend to sell forward-looking roadmaps. Here, it's the other way around. The roadmaps are really forward. You're actually telling them to go back so they can deploy things properly. So it's a little shift to providers as well in terms of how they sell this.
And I guess in terms of automation, do you think it will happen in steps, or are we talking about more when the model gets to a certain level of accuracy, and I'm sure there are benchmarks to evaluate that, it's further out because you don't see the models are going to keep making progress? And I'm guessing you're not a believer in synthetic data, because the open internet data has been used. Whatever these companies could use has been used. So you're not a believer in synthetic data, I'm guessing.
Yeah, look, when I was when I had a real job at some point, my first job was in Excel, and I was an investment banking analyst, and it was a little bit garbage in, garbage out was what I was told, not to make my Excel models. I think 20 years later, I feel the same way. We're adding more synthetic data. Does it really improve the quality of the outcomes that happen in the space? Coming back to your concept of step function change, AI is a very different type of software in the sense it's massively iterative. If you look at classic software development, the way it works, it's not that iterative. You have a set of releases, you have core functions, you have function points that need to be released, they get released. Now, it may happen in an agile way. I don't want to confuse the flow of functionality with how it's developed, because agile software can happen in any case, but software has a defined set of functionality that happens. Because AI and Gen AI and some of the models are a little more probabilistic, it's going to be massively iterative, because you can never be deterministic on what you'll get when, because of the nature of the software. And that creates issues for us in a world where we want everything to be deterministic. So for example, if 10 customers come with the same set of inputs, I want exactly the same output for them. That cannot be guaranteed right now, because there's a little bit of float in the model, there's a little bit of hallucination in the model. And who gets most excited? The auditors in the company. Because they're like, we gave you 10 things to go, you put it through the system, and I got 4 different answers. Well, that's the nature of AI. So I think it's going to be very iterative. We're going to have to learn how to deal with it.
But that's going to prevent the model from reasoning, which is where I think everyone wants these models to reason. So I guess if it's deterministic, then you're saying it won't reason.
It won't reason, and if it reasons too much, it's going to be very difficult to have outcomes that make sense. See, this is the challenge. That's why you're saying, if I have a 6th grader who's using a ChatGPT quite extensively. He's been told he needs to cite it when he uses it. I hope he does that. You're like, if he has the whole world on his fingertips at a $21 a month account, why can't you at Verizon do all these things? It's this gap. I need it to be deterministic. I can't have it hallucinate. We have RAG architectures and other things to hold it in place. But this probabilistic versus deterministic is a new concept for businesses. Because everything we do in our company, our audit, our SOC compliance, our revenue reporting, offers we make, every single thing is very deterministic. That's the world we've grown up in. And now we have this probabilistic world with a little bit of float. It's going to shake things up a lot. And I don't think we are all fully ready to know what that happens with that.
How much time do you spend in terms of evaluating these different models that are out there? And looks like the race is narrowing to 5 frontier models. Is that something you spend your time on?
I may have a naive view of this. So look, I think foundational models are pretty commoditized right now for the most part. I think there are 4 or 5 big models. It costs $3-4 billion each to create a model right now. If you pull China out of the picture, probably 2 or 3 companies can afford it and do that piece. I think where the big value is going to be is verticalization of this. Verticalization, domain speciality, and that's where all the value is going to be created. Who's going to be the trillionaires that come out of this are going to be companies who found a way to take some of this foundational model, customized it. It's the next wave. If you look at SaaS companies, every SaaS company was an Excel spreadsheet that became a SaaS company over a period of time. Think about it. Every single SaaS company is a spreadsheet sitting somewhere in someone's desk, is now a fully SaaS company, you can think. I think models are going to be similar, where every SaaS company out there is going to get impacted by AI, because they're going to take those large models, verticalize it, domain specialize it, and that's where you'll see a lot of the value.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked the prior panelists in terms of what changed 18 to 24 months back when ChatGPT came in terms of your planning? And I'm guessing you guys plan 2-3 years out in terms of your IT spend and what you're going to focus on. So what changed?
Look, I think the previous panelist said there is no more budget than there already is in the system. So I think we'll have to take money from somewhere to fund a lot of this. And I think most companies are going to have to go through that. So there's going to be a loser and a winner in all of this. The piece that irritates me a little bit is there's not enough products to buy. It's all raw technology. You put it, whenever I hear words like co-developed, co-invent, I get nervous because it's code for there's not enough productization in the field in that space. So I think we are doing a lot more trial and error. We have a lot more people just playing around with things. But one of the things we've done quite effectively is shut down all proof of concepts. Because I just feel, in a large company, the easiest way to say no to something is to ask them to do a proof of concept. But it takes so much resource cycles. It pulls my CTO, his team, my CIOs, all of them in so much. So I would rather focus on 4 or 5 big applications, Mandeep, where we see a lot more value than spread ourselves quite thin in the space. So
and what would those be, the 4 or 5?
For us, I think contact center is definitely a big one, both for sales and service. I think the other piece for us is typically contact centers have always been a service mechanism first. But we've launched something called Service Plus, which is you service and you sell. I want all these centers to be sales engines over a period of time. And that's been one of the biggest upsides of Gen AI. So that's one definite. Second is personalization of offers. In real time, dynamic offers that can be scored with reactions back and forth. The third is network planning. I think we are really hot on network planning. We run the largest network on earth. How you plan that network, how you move power, how do you move resources. And of course, the actual act of writing code. We haven't spoken about that, but I'm hoping to see 30, 40, 50% productivity gain over the next 3 to 4 years in writing code in that space. So these are our 3 plus just better code development are where we've doubled down over a period of time. Use cases is going to be revenue, cyber, because cyber deterministic works probabilistic works really well for us. So these are the 4 or 5 areas where we've doubled down on. There are some areas we've missed, like supply chain, and whether you can write a better PR press release using Gen AI. Someone will figure it out, but I'm not in that space.
And what could go wrong? If there's one thing that could go wrong with the assumptions that you're making about deploying generative AI in a certain way, what would that risk factor be?
Look, I think the first thing is it can cost me so much I don't get enough value out of it. I'm nervous about that. Okay. It's still an unproven thing in the business world out there. So I deploy all this, we deploy political capital, real capital. The ROI is just not there in some of these cases. So I think that's a real piece. The second thing is the control mechanism that we have around it. For example, you're chatting with a chat bot, and you say, lower my bill, and very efficiently it lowers the bill. It does its job. Somewhere in the process, we may have missed catching that. So those are some unintended consequences. That's why we try and release it for smaller pools. We check, and then before we roll it out broadly in the space. Those are 2, and the last is regulation. It's awkward that the regulation comes out before the product comes out, but I guess lawmakers have stuff.
And we like to end on an optimistic note, so what could surprise you to the upside when it comes to what you're factoring in now?
Labor productivity in the country. If you take the last 15 years of labor productivity in America, there are 2 ways labor productivity happens. The first one is outsourcing, offshoring type work, which has come to an end, or it's slowed down a lot. The second is tech factor, which is automation, robotics. That's kind of grown up a little, but net, we've only seen 1.5% labor productivity every year. In a country our size with so much technology and so many GPUs, we got to see better labor productivity in this space. So I'm really bullish that over the next 10, 20 years, with AI in general, robotics, it really helps bring some manufacturing back. I think it's going to do a lot for the social fabric of our country, employment, and it'll get us back on staying on course to being the most productive labor force in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving an applause for Swaminarayan Sampath.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes the content portion of our event. I want to thank all of you for chiming in. Thank you for all of your questions that kept coming in on the iPad. I was like, thank you. It's really, really helpful. I also want to thank our sponsor, IBM, for being such a part of this as well. If you would like to find out some more information about them, all you have to do is head to the resources tag over on our website, click that, and it'll lead you to some more information on them. And if you heard something today and you're like, I want to remember what it said, I didn't quite write it down, you can watch the replay. You can watch the entire session. Head over to BloombergLive.com and you'll be able to watch it there. Also, hint, we also post a lot on LinkedIn, so be sure to check us out there as well, and maybe you want to repost it. But thank you again for everyone joining here, for everyone joining on the live stream. Have a good night. Please join us for cocktails and networking. Thank you.